My name is Alan Joshi. I'm based in London and I represent Network Science. Very much focused on deep tech, on innovation, client relationships, and partnerships. And I represent a company called Network Science. We are a 4-year-old company, again, focused on innovation, deep tech, and helping startups and scale ups like yourself uh, to grow their presence across the world, spread their wings, so to say. So that's about me. Sandeep Herdikar, we call him Sandy. He's the founder of Network Science and CEO. Um, of course, he's been passionate about this for the get go and has been tirelessly working on building the overall portfolio for Network Science for the last 4 years. Sandy, why don't you talk a little bit more about yourself and then we'll circle back and talk about the topic.
So, Anand, thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be part of this series of sessions that you would be conducting. So I'm very glad to address a set of startup founders who are very keen to expand their operations beyond their home geography. Uh, yeah, Sandeep Hardikar, the co-founder and CEO at Network Science, started this firm after a 20-year stint in the technology world, helped large organizations get to new markets, worked for 12 years with HCL Tech, helped them get into Middle East as a market, and got to understand the nuances of that market. Obviously had to set up the offices, partners, win clients, deliver the commitments and things like that. Moved on to another technology company called Microland. Worked with them for 6 years, primarily helping again the company grow into Middle East as a market, and then move to London to help them grow into the European market. Worked for a private equity firm as well uh, for a few years. Again, the role was the same, to help them get into new markets, or for all the investee companies of theirs, which was a very interesting blend of startups that they had invested in. And my role was the same, get into new markets. So thrilled to be part of this incredible journey at Network Science, helping startups get to new markets. And you know, I'm basically here, or Anand's request, to share our learnings, share our findings with fellow startups, founders who are very keen to get to geographies that otherwise are very difficult to crack into. Back to
Fantastic.
you, Anjo.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sandeep. I really appreciate you, sort of introducing yourself. And again, having both of us having spent many years across multiple geographies, I was part of Singapore, Australia, and now in UK. We have seen, the challenges that we as um, entrepreneurs or we as people who establish brands and businesses in various geographies, the challenges that we face, and we hence we thought it will be important for us to have this conversation, talk to the people who are currently going through similar challenges and see whether we can share our experiences, encourage conversations, and take it from there. So we are obviously addressing to multiple startups and scale-ups. The focus for today's conversation is very much focused towards Central Europe or mainland Europe, so to say, and how and what that the founders of these companies, these scale-ups, would be thinking in terms of their market expansion plans, right? So that is what we're going to discuss, how we can, what a B2B enterprise, what a scale up can do to get itself going in UK, potentially US markets as well. So if you look at for any B2B enterprise, AI startup or others, global expansion is not just about crossing borders. It's also about navigating long sales cycles, difficult to convince enterprise buyers, proving your ROIs as you go along. So in this webinar, we'll try to debunk some of the myths, share some stories, and tackle some real life challenges that the founders are facing when they try to scale up, especially to markets like in US. Right. So some of your founders very much in Europe would be also facing language issues. We will try and tackle some of that as well as we go along. Again, just to highlight, this is just the first episode of the series. We'll try and address all these aspects across 3 or more episodes as we go along. So let's get going. I'll post some questions to you, Sandeep, and you try and
Sure.
handle them. We'll obviously take it from there as we go along. So I think the first thing that I would like to sort of bring to the attention here is, as a founder of a well-established scale-up, let's say with 4 to 5 years or maybe even younger company that you are, you have good reference clients in your small geography in a small country that probably you work in within the Europe, have a good, mature, innovative, sort of a platform which has a potential to be globally applicable. In a scenario like this, what are the main limiting factors that a company and a founder of such company would face to offer your product, services, create your brand, win your clients in large geographies like UK and US? What are your thoughts on that? What are those challenges this a young company would face? Sandeep?
Yeah, interesting question. We face this question multiple times because we are constantly in touch with the startup community across the world, not only in Central Europe or mainland Europe, but across, right? Um, Actually, in reality, the challenges are the same wherever you are from, whether you're from Australia or Europe or from US. In my mind, after doing this for 4.5 years, I believe there are two big challenges that the founders have to tackle with. All the points actually that you mentioned are easy challenges, are addressable challenges, are challenges that can be taken care of. There are two big challenges, which I believe are the biggest hurdles for the founders. Number one, uh, most of them feel that once they've built the platform and once they've been successful in their home country, there is a market waiting to accept them. And the moment they will make the first 2 3 calls or go into that geography for a month or two, suddenly they will be flooded with a large number of opportunities. uh, Obviously that does not happen, right? It does happen. There are some symptoms that they believe that that is the way forward. You may get great meetings, you may get great conversations going, but in reality, to move from conversations to proposals to closures is the most difficult path or the journey that the founders have to take. And most of the founders really believe that if they get the conversation going, they can actually pull through to the win very easily also, right? That's the biggest challenge. That's one big challenge. I find convincing the stuff founders that that's not the case. The second one, which is even more difficult to address, is the unknown unknowns, right? It's something that most of us believe we've got a great plan, we've created a great strategy, we put it all on paper, we've spoken to a few customers, we've spoken to with a few friends. And you know what? I know what it takes to win in the UK or the US market, right? I know what it will be to beat the existing competition. But then when you really go into the market, you are hit by thousand other things that you really did not anticipate and you really did not know. Uh, Once you've crossed these two big challenges in your mind and you accept that there will be times where you will be faced with unknown unknowns and you've got to give time for the market to accept you, then the other challenges seems to be far easier to tackle. So I've always would say, let's first tackle the first two challenges and then
Yeah.
get to the rest.
Yeah, it's about taking the right first steps, maybe baby steps, so to say, right? But getting those initial challenges, understanding them is probably half the battle one. So I think you're spot on there. I think that also kind of leads to a potential sort of a thought process that more often than not, a founder will not be able to anticipate what is the sales cycle in the geography that wanting to expand into.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Because when they would have started in let's say a Germany-based startup, they would have had good connects within Germany. They would have had probably a much faster turnaround from a conversation to win. But that may not necessarily happen in a new geography, especially a more mature geographies like UK, US. So in a scenario like that, when you have to potentially face long sales cycle sort of occurs, how do you handle that? And what are the ways and means that you're seeing work, and what are the ways and means that you think people should avoid?
Yeah, sure. See, it's all about the why. I always ask the customer or ask the founders, why do you exist? Why are you even building a platform? What problem are you
Mm.
solving? And if you don't solve the problem, what's going to happen? If that is crystal clear, and you need to obviously answer that question for every geography. So you gave an example of Germany, right? Now, Germany has certain nuances which maybe UK does not, and even further, US doesn't. And they have their own individual nuances. Unless you contextualize your platform or your solution or your accelerator that you're building for the market that you want to address, you will continue to be in this in facing this kind of a challenge. Long sales cycle is a given, right? We all deal with, right, Anand, we deal with 40 plus enterprise B2B AI startups, right? That's what the field we are in. It's a new industry. AI, most of the customers don't really understand what it means.
Right.
Three, it's meant to be difficult sale. And that's why, we work with these founders to help them get into new markets. So
Correct.
if you do not have a clear understanding of why you exist and why should you exist in a new market, like a UK
Mm.
or US, you will face the long sales cycle or even longer sales cycle. Let me put it that way, right? Beyond what is
Yeah.
obvious. So and you should be comfortable with it. Frankly,
Mm.
it's more of accepting that the first year is going to be the maximum pain for a startup in a new geography, and you should accept it. But if you do the right things, if you build the right foundation, if you build the right
Correct.
brand, if you present your solution well, then the sales cycle will get shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
And
Makes
that
sense.
should be your focus.
No, I think you address the why very clearly, right? But there's also a bit of a where, right? In terms of what and what size of companies, right? I mean, shall I go to
Yeah,
big brands or shall I go to, maybe mid-sized companies where lesser competition might be there? There's also a
yeah,
question of how, right? In terms of what will work best. Shall I simply land and expand? Shall I just hire some people? Shall I offer something free? So there are all those things that probably need to be thought out as a strategy book, if I can
yeah.
call that, before you even think about going into a market. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest question. As we say, it's $1 million question, right? And I'll give you our own example, Anant. And some of these happened before you joined us. So I remember when we started right in COVID times, and
Yeah.
we were representing a few startups across the globe and getting them to the UK market. That was our core value proposition at that point in time. And I remember we had a fantastic startup. We continue to work with them. It's a fintech startup which creates an early warning engine for the banking customers, where they can predict who will pay the EMI on time and who will not, or who will on a monthly basis. It's a very powerful platform. So we thought we've got a winner, and
Mm.
this company wasn't from the UK. We were representing them in the UK. We got access to Barclays, and we presented this to the Barclays, collections and analytics division, who were looking at a early warning engine for 24 million credit card holders, right? That's the scale and size. So you had the biggest of the brand, you had the high street bank giving you access, you had a big project in mind, in front of you. And we said, hey, and our startup that we were working with was thrilled because, Barclays, by the way, right?
Mm.
You hit one and then you're on a roll. We spent 6 months, Anant, after the client said that we want to go with your solution. We spent
Mm.
6 months to convince the procurement of Barclays to onboard us or the startup and go through the procurement process. 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's one story, right? The other is now, if you see today, right? We signed with JP Morgan Chase. We signed JP Morgan Chase for $1 million deal on a particular startup. We went through the similar process, but then because there is an acceptance in our mind, and now we know how to navigate through these processes within the large companies, we are now a bit more comfortable with larger organizations as compared to what we were 4 years back, right? So obviously, each company has its own path towards breaking into big brands. Who doesn't want to work for Fortune 500 company? Everyone wants to. But
Correct.
then, do you have the credibility to show? Do you have the wherewithal to sustain the procurement process? Do you have the credentials to present to the procurement process? Are some of the
Correct.
things that the founders and the companies have to think very hard to really make a judgment. I would say once you make a judgment, then don't play short. If you want to play only in the Fortune 500, then give yourselves 2 to 3 years. That I will break into these market. But if you want
Correct.
to also do wins and quick wins and also do bring in revenues and also do the big brands, it's not the strategy that works.
Yeah. So you need to have a clear driver in terms of what you intend to achieve, let's say in the first 6 months of your presence in a new geography,
Yeah,
and then accordingly pick your battles, so to say. Right.
correct,
So yeah,
correct, correct.
that's very interesting because I think more often than not, we are seeing that there is a lot of aspiration that the founders would have about their product because they love their product. Who doesn't make their own child, right? So, but they will not necessarily be able to comprehend the challenges that they would have in a new geography and hence probably set a bar which is not what they should be probably aiming for, and hence probably getting that conversation early to set the right target, set the right bar for you to achieve with a clear timeline is probably a very critical sort of a starting point. And
Yeah, to
that's
that
where,
point, yeah, to, to,
yeah,
to, to that point, right? The metrics point, the targets point, I think it's a very relevant point that you brought out. And we always say it's all, in the first year of a new geography, it's a story of two halves, the first
right,
6 months and the next 6 months. The first 6 months should be focused on leading indicators,
correct,
indicators that allow you to say, hey, this was my strategy, this was my plan. My plan was to go direct. My plan was to hit the Fortune 500 companies. My plan was to take these modules. My plan
yeah,
was to, present 10 demos or whatever that plan could be, right? Focus on leading indicators to help you judge, are you on the right path and are you making the right progress? If you are not, then make the changes quickly. Don't just sit and say, hey,
yeah,
surely something will work out. No, it doesn't work out, right? You've got to change. Once you've built the right leading indicators in the first 6 months and you've put the right foundation, then change your next 6 months focus to closures. Don't
correct,
try to close in the first 6 months itself. If it comes, great, but that should not be your goal. The
yeah,
focus for the next 6 months should be closures. Again, not try to hit big. Try to say, hey, can I get go beyond the POC? Don't offer free POCs. Don't offer complimentary pilots. Ask the client to pay for it, even if it is €1, $1, go through the
correct.
procurement process, get yourself listed in the vendor list, and then see the magic happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is very valuable insights. And I think let's dig a little bit deeper on the how part, right? You did
Sure.
mention about the word direct, right? So I think there's always this question in almost every founder's mind. Should I go directly, right? Should I open up an office? Should I hire a chief sales officer, chief revenue officer, so to say?
Yeah.
Or should I, try it out first, maybe see whether a partner can help me? To what level of commitments and at what stage you make that call of how far deep you want to go? And if partnering is the right choice, what is the best way to partner? Any thoughts on the how part of it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's our business, right?
Yeah.
So of course, I have a few thoughts, and that too very strong thoughts around this. But frankly, it is dependent on three things. It is dependent on how much time does the founder have to break into a
Yeah.
new geography. Number two, how strategic is the new geography?
Hmm.
Is it i- is it okay if you fail or you can't fail, right? So that's the second piece. And third, most importantly, if you are the founder, co-founder, founding team member, can you move into that geography? If the answer to these are, I have no time, in fact, I would love a zero time to market or something similar,
Hmm.
to, you know what, I can't afford to fail in that geography no matter what, right?
Yeah.
And number three, I would love to move as a founding team member, but frankly, I can't because I have other responsibilities like product development and and continuing to win in my home market. If these are the questions that you've clear answers to, then I think the only way you should do this is to get a specialist to run your sales in the geography. A
Correct.
company, not a person. An ecosystem, not an individual. Someone who has done this for multiple organizations, someone who can get you in front of customers and understands deeply why you exist and what is the outcome that you can commit to your customers. You got
Yeah.
to find that partner. Otherwise, most of the people, what happens is they are in search for a superhuman. They believe that they will hire the best guy. Maybe they hire, maybe they get the best person from Google or IBM or TCS, and they say, hey, I've got a heavy hitter. This guy was successful. This guy or girl was amazingly successful in their earlier work with a large, big four or a big SI. And you know what? They're going to turn around it for us. And 99% of the time, you know what the answer is, right? It just doesn't work out
Yeah.
because it's not about that individual. Unfortunately, the person would be great, but it's the ecosystem that is required to really win business in that market. Also,
Correct.
how many 20-year-olds are you putting on the front line? And I'm using the word front line is not only in front of the customer on ground, but also behind you to help you do
Yeah.
commercialization of your IP, right? Because those are the people who really understand the AI world.
Correct.
Frankly, Anand, you and I don't understand the AI world, and you know, and we need to accept that. And that's somewhere founders find challenging. They fail, and then they come back to us saying, "Hey, can you now help because we tried our way
Right.
and it's not working out."
Yeah, I mean, just I was just as you were talking, I was just thinking about in last 2 years, I have been talking to some of the startups, and I've particularly faced this challenge quite a lot. I was talking to a Mediterranean company, and they were hell bent on hiring a very hard hitting, well established
Yeah,
chief revenue officer, right? While
yeah,
the entire company was had no presence in UK. So they went and hired somebody. I told them, look, hiring is obviously one choice, but is that the only solution? Uh, but they went and hired. For 6 months, they tried. It didn't work. Then they hired somebody else for another 6 months, right? And they're again going through the similar sort of emotions where they were now starting to doubt whether they even want to be in UK. So they're making
yeah,
their whole strategic decision based on two mishires, right?
yeah,
So there's clearly a pitfall in terms of just going and getting somebody. That person may or may not gel with you as a company, you as a founder, and whole product line. They need to be able to take your product. They might have done amazingly well in Google, right, or
yeah,
wherever they would have been, but it's
yeah,
about your product that they need to associate themselves with. So that's where I think what you mentioned, that it's about hiring an ecosystem, not an individual. Hiring a sales oriented, market oriented, who understands and has an intelligence about the market, rather than just getting a person on board. Right. So I think that
I
is a very critical element where we
yeah, yeah,
obviously
yeah.
have been dealing a
I
lot.
would say you need to I think you need to look for a co-founder, so to
Mm,
speak, who is not an
correct.
individual but an ecosystem. A
Yeah.
co-founder that is focused on sales, business development, market access, and brings the same level of energy and same level of passion that your co-founding team will bring in. And
Yeah.
don't rely on one person, rely on the ecosystem. I think
Correct.
that's the best way that at least we have seen working for the
Absolutely.
companies.
And also, there's an element of, after all, you're a startup, you're an unknown entity yourself, right? You
Yeah,
might be well known in your own country, and your competition can be those big brands like the Accentures and the Indian
correct.
IT-based companies, likes of product companies out of US. So you're competing potentially with them and being a, being that small challenger. So how can a partner like ourselves or somebody can help such companies and get the large enterprises to trust these young brands? Any
Yeah,
view that you have done
it's
or any experiences you have had?
yeah, it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. See, any change for a client is tough, right? So you ask a client like a JPMC or a Barclays to say, hey, don't work with a Accenture from tomorrow and work with a small unknown company like a Network Science. Come on, I mean it's going to be even to get on the table to have a conversation like that is going to be a tough thing to get,
That's
right?
true.
But then that's why I go back to say that why do you even exist? Because you're creating something very unique and something very pioneering. That's why you're building a platform. You may be building a platform in marketing or sales or supply chain or logistics or production, manufacturing, and quality, whatever your product is currently doing. You're building it because there is uniqueness in it, because there's something very which is very pioneering. It
Yeah.
also been successful in your home market. So there is an element of product market fitment that you've established at least in your home country, right? If you take that piece and then bring in the context of a large organization, right? And
Yeah.
believe that your product or your platform can really solve that context or solve that problem. The only thing then you need in between is the right people who can present your story in a very compelling way.
Absolutely.
Now, that is where, again, the biggest thing is. Now, we may believe that, Accenture has the best business development people or IBM has the best development people. Sorry to say, but they don't. If you are a product person and if you train the right people to take your product in the right way and you build the ecosystem that way, you will get not only access to the decision makers, but you'll also be able to present a very compelling story. And 9 out of 10 times, the client will say, hey, I want to work with you.
Fabulous.
That is something that you got to believe that works. Of course, it's a tough one. But
Yeah.
that's what we've been doing for the last 4.5 years. Today we have delivered an 8 times returns to the startup community that we work for, because we believe not only in the strength of the product, but we also believe in the strength of the story and the reason
Correct.
why they exist, and bring in the context of a client so very well that is unmatchable even by the players who pay big dollars to their sales team and but don't get the best quality sales team on the ground.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Sandeep. I'm just conscious of the time as well. And, obviously, it has been a good first episode. We tried to cover the hows and the whys and the wheres of, getting into a new geography. There's a lot more to address, right? And that is where I'm excited to continue this conversation. We'll do an episode 2. We will try and talk about, you know, what about investing? How do we handle that? What about compliances that matter to various geographies, right? What about the operational elements? So we will try and address some of those things as we go along in the next episodes. But in finally, in nutshell, all the audience members who are the founders and startups, what they're really looking for is the market expansion. They are looking for funding. Those are two main things that any founder needs. And our aim is to try and address that through ourselves as individuals, as well as the network science. So we look forward for the audience members to tune in for episode 2. We will soon announce when and how and we will do that. And we'll also try and address some of the questions that we'll cover in that episode. So thank you everyone for being part of this webinar. Thanks a lot, Sandeep, for being here. And it was, as always, a good conversation for us to, address this topic. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Anand, thank you for inviting me. Look forward to meeting you next when I'm in London.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye bye.